the topic of this morning is information technology, is IT. Specifically, how IT can support the airlines and the airports to meet the needs of the future traveler. In other words, how technology can meet the expectations of the future traveler in Africa. So to help me discuss the topic, to help me debate on the subject, I will invite on stage our guest speakers. Please welcome the panelists. And I first will turn to our hosting airline, Rob. Rob, in your opinion, what is the level of IT capability today in the Africa aviation industry? And what can be done collectively as a collaboration thing to improve?
First of all, let's start off with what is the level of IT in Africa today. But before we address that point, I would like to put down the starting point that IT on its own is not an end goal. It is merely a business facilitator. At the end of the day, our customers, be we airlines or airports, don't really care how something works. They just care that it does work and that it meets their very specific needs. With this as in mind, I also firmly believe, and we've practiced it with numerous brands in West and East Africa, to look for very simplistic solutions that are preferably off the shelf. And sitting on this very panel with me, to AirCare's original challenge, which was to build its internet site, are two partners, namely Amadeus and Wirecard, who, the day we started the project, they weren't working together actively for AirCare, but both of them had a part of a puzzle that we needed to meet our customer needs. So we brought the two parties together, and following that, they've developed a product that is now actually at the point where it could be retailed beyond AirCare itself, should they wish. So it's proof of collaboration driven by customer need and the customer segment, i.e. AirCare's customers, and the resulting technology can be commercialized post the development and the implementation. The other thing that I think we need to be very aware of is, and I say this as someone who's worked in West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, and Southern Africa, and most of Europe, each brand believes that it is unique. It has a segment of culture that cannot be duplicated or should not be duplicated. However, the reality of it is that in actual fact, our global customer needs are pretty much very similar. What people want is something that works, that extends their life, and that converges so that they don't need to carry around 7 pieces of equipment to interact with the brand. Which means that if we had unofficial standardization of approach from the technology aspect, we could rely on our individual brands as airlines or airports to personalize and to create that customer experience that we believe our segment requires. Again, it's not very complex, but it requires each of the customer airlines to accept the fact that their IT infrastructure will not be unique. It will be pretty much off the shelf, which again reduces your development costs, which translates to a better profit margin.
Connor, if we look at the different touch points between the airline and the traveler, as we have discussed so far, what do you think would be working well today, and where do you think the industry needs to continue pushing to bring the improvements to the traveler?
Yeah. Well, if you go back to the very first slide that you showed in your presentation, you had all the touch points there. From where the passenger, there's the inspiration to buy, so I need to go and fly, I'm going to go online, I'm going to go to my travel agent, I'm going to look at the options, I'm going to book the fulfillment, the pre-flight, the airport, through the airport, post-flight, destination, and finally capturing all that information. There are a whole load of touch points there where the airline can actually meet the customer and fulfill the customer expectations. And I think in all of that, the first part of it is in the airline's domain. Yeah, so that's how you reach your customer. And today we know through mobile technology, it's probably the fastest growing channel, ought to be the fastest growing channel that we're after, where you can really push down your message, your content, and lock in your customer. That's the key. That's where, if you look at what's happened in the US and Europe and elsewhere, that's where it's all going now. And there's a whole huge piece still to be done here in Africa, I think, on recognizing where the rest of the airline world is going in terms of selling and catching up with that. At the same time, I think there's enormous potential because of the actual the nature of the African market. It's very highly mobile driven, but we have to catch up with that. So there are enormous opportunities there in terms of pushing your content out and locking down your customer. The bit that doesn't work very well in many places is when the passenger gets to the airport. And there we see it can all fall apart, and the airline loses the control of the passenger in that part of the whole journey process, and that's the huge piece that needs to be tackled. We saw in the film you introduced, which is really, I think, the IATA Fast Track program. And if you're going to talk about how you meet the needs of the passenger in future, right through from start to finish, this is an enormous piece in the middle that has to be tackled, getting the airport piece done. The airline can do its piece, but the airports really need to come up and fulfill the end of it, you know?
I firmly believe in personalization. However, that said, that word is very broad within the industry. What the African customer wants is an extension of his present experience. Why, again, and I keep using this example, but it's because it is still a global trendsetter. Why does mobile money work? Because it filled a need that was already there. Now, if you look at the African customer, their needs are relatively simple. They're not asking for things that we haven't thought of yet or that don't already exist. It's just a case of first getting those basic cornerstones in your building correct. You need to put your foundation down. So that means if you're going to go through a website, although there's no real need for a website in Africa today, you can go straight to a mobile phone environment. But if you're going to do it, it must be available 24/7. It must do basic functionality. You can't have good days and bad days. You can't have it disappear offline for 3 days. The data has to be current. It has to be 24/7, and it has to be immediate. The other thing that you need to do is determine what is your risk factors that you'll accept. And just watching Madam Fatima walk across in front of me reminded me of a discussion we had. We are very close to one of the leading fraud capitals of the globe. So when we opened flyaircare.com, my question to her was, what do you accept as the CEO of a company as your fraud levels? She gave me a percentage. We work with that percentage. It is slightly higher than the global average, but lower than the African average. But she had to justify that to the board. So it also requires leadership. But the bottom line is, it is simple. It does definitely come back to the basics. Mm-hmm. There are two aspects. First of all of the carriers sitting in this room for the last 2 days control at least one airport in Africa. So they are either the largest customer or the largest partner of that particular airport. The processes that take place in that airport are determined by an entity that earns income from that airport. So I may not be able to change procedures, for instance, in Mombasa, but I am very comfortable saying that with the management team of AirCare, we can influence the processes at Maya Maya. Now, that's point one. So you may not get a global or a uniform transcontinental experience, but each of us control at least one major airport. The other part starts then when you look at the Pan-African aviation bodies, that I feel their role is to absolutely start canvassing government, but actively and collectively. And there I think the African Union platform is probably our strongest chance to create an accepted global norm. This will give you an indication of my age, but going back to 9/11, I was in not quite Central Africa, but basically on the border of East Africa at the time. The change that happened from one day to the next is quite phenomenal. It went from almost no security to implementing almost the US-type security in an airport in a very small country in East Africa. There was no consultation at all. That is driven by governments. And as the AU and as the individual aviation bodies and as the customers that supply the financing that supports those individual bodies, we need to actively canvass collectively. So again, collaboration.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, maybe Conor, you have a take on this.
We talked down around the table about going back to basics, and absolutely, let's not run ahead of ourselves here on what is to be done tomorrow. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of where the rest of the industry is going in terms of personalization and contextualization. And I'll pull back a little bit if I can, and you know, just remind ourselves as airlines. I mean, we really are looking to see IT these days as an enabling technology that enables process change, lower cost of sale, and all of that. And that's fundamentally important, that there's a high adoption rate by carriers if they are to try and improve their cost of sale lines. The mobile channel, avoiding conventional sales channels, these are all themes that are running around the agendas of commercial teams and finance teams and airlines today, how you do that. But technology can enable you to do that. Looking at, again, at some of these conferences on ancillary revenues and the technology that drives that, this is a phenomenal earner for airlines, has been a phenomenal earner for airlines in the US, and it contributes significantly to bottom line. And in a continent where we saw yesterday and throughout, where the profitability of the airline sector is so low, you have to find every single way you can to try and improve your revenues. And the thinking has gone away from it's fares only, fares and excess baggage. It's got to be much more than that. And the bottom line contribution that ancillary revenues, and there are all kinds of new ones coming in, are very, very interesting and delivering real change. Now, talk about personalization, contextualization. What the airline is trying to do is push these ancillary revenues out to its customers through mobile channels, through web, and indeed through GDS, who offer the NDC capability today. So you're pushing through a lot more content. You're showing pictures of your seat. So whereas today, or historically in the GDS, you're up there, the price is the same as the competitor. The customer doesn't know what the difference necessarily is in service. Through this, you can actually put a lot more content out there. This is our business seat, this is our economy seat, and whatever. You can influence the choice of decision in making in that. And as you find that your customers are buying, you're collecting data, storing data, analyzing data, all with a focus on understanding what kind of customers you have out there, what their buying profiles are, their buying patterns are, and then you are looking to offer selected products to them based on their travel patterns. So that's the way it's going, and that sounds like an awful long way away perhaps today in Africa, but I think airlines cannot lose sight of the fact that it can contribute a significant bottom line contribution.
To go to the near future, what does ACAIR need to do as a key innovation now?
Without repeating what I said earlier, mobile, mobile, mobile. I can't stress it enough. In the African continent, having the ability to offer a customer experience through technology on the mobile phone is key. At the end of the day, this continent has more or deeper smartphone penetration than any other continent globally. We have countries, you're sitting in one of them actually. Congo has a smartphone penetration of 140%. Nobody has that. So in other words, whatever we're going to do, simply put, take traditional processes, as Johan said, take standard, simple stuff, and put them on a mobile device. That is a short 18-month goal for AirCare.
All right. Thank you for that. Maybe, Conor, with Arik, we heard personalization is the next key thing. We heard mobile is the next key thing. What is your take on the key innovation for today?
I'll take a slightly different slant on that question if I can. I think it's very important in all of that the airlines look again at their own mindset on how they want to approach all of that. And it's been said, the commercial director of the airline of tomorrow is not going to come from within the airline or from another airline. They're going to come from Carrefour, they're going to come from Marks and Spencer, because they come from a retailing background. And that is where the selling of the future in the airline business is heading. It's gone away from fares and tickets. It's moving to retailing, selling an empty seat beside somebody. You know the flight's quite empty, it's not going to fill. Sell it for $30 so you can block the seat. Yeah? Offer the guy in economy on a long-haul flight a business class meal. He can't afford to fly in business class, but he'll pay $40 to get a little bit of extra treatment. Loads of ways you can add to the bottom line. And that needs to be thought about very seriously, understood, embraced. And then you need to go after and select the right technology partners, and get that in place. And if you have that, that will, I think, create momentum collectively for us all then to go and look at that huge big piece, as we said, the airport's in the middle. We would love to do mobile check-in today, mobile work, if there were scanners at the airport. It's as simple as that. So that's where I see it. I think there's a big message there for the airlines to look at.
Well, I think this is the end of our session. I thank you very much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed the show. And especially a special thank you to all the panelists. Thank you very much.